Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today we're tackling something that's pretty crucial, really. It's Peter F. Drucker's Managing Oneself.
Well, that's a good one. A classic.
Yeah, and it's not your typical self-help stuff, right?
Right.
This is about taking control. Your career, your skills, your life, the whole thing, and making it work in this crazy world that feels like it's changing every single minute.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And what I find so interesting about Drucker is, he wasn't just some guru up on a mountaintop.
Oh, totally.
He was out there in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
34 books, teaching, consulting with these huge companies, even started a foundation for nonprofits.
Yeah. Yeah.
This guy knew how the world worked.
You really did. Okay, so let's get into this managing oneself thing. Right off the bat, Drucker hits you with this line that really made me stop and think.
Oh, yeah.
He says, history's great achievers, think Napoleon, Da Vinci, Mozart.
Big names.
Yeah. They didn't just, trip and fall into greatness. They managed themselves.
It's true.
It's powerful, right? He's basically saying that managing yourself is like the bedrock of any achievement. Doesn't matter if you're leading armies or painting the Sistine Chapel.
Or writing operas.
Exactly. It's about, knowing who you are and using that to take charge.
Totally. Self-awareness is key.
And here's the thing that really blew my mind. Drucker believes that most people don't even know what their strengths are.
Oh, that's such a good point.
We're so busy trying to fix all our weaknesses
Right.
that we completely miss out on the power of what we're already good at.
It's almost like we're taught to apologize for our strengths
I know.
and obsess over our shortcomings. But Drucker, he says, flip the script.
He does.
To build a career, concentrate on your strengths. Put yourself where those strengths can really shine, produce results.
I love that. Okay, but how do we actually do that? How do we figure out what our strengths are? It's not like we can all just be like, oh, I'm brilliant. Step aside, Mozart.
Right, right. Well, Drucker gives us a tool for that, and it's called feedback analysis.
Feedback analysis.
Yeah. And it's pretty simple, but it's super effective.
Okay, I like simple. I like effective. Tell me more.
So next time you've got a big decision, right?
Yeah.
Where you're about to start some massive project,
Go.
write down what you expect will happen. Then, 9 to 12 months later, compare those expectations with the actual results.
That's it.
That's it.
That seems almost too easy.
Yeah, but the power is in doing it consistently. Even Drucker himself said that. Even after doing this for 15, 20 years, he was still constantly surprised by what he learned about himself.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He discovered he had this intuitive understanding of technical people. Engineers, accountants, market researchers, stuff he never even realized before.
Wow. That's wild. It makes you realize how much we can miss about ourselves if we don't really analyze our experiences.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. Feedback analysis. That helps us figure out our strengths. What's next?
Well, once you know what you're good at, you got to ask yourself, how do I perform best?
How do I perform best?
Yeah, and this, Drucker says, is even more important than just knowing your strength.
Okay, I'm intrigued. He talks about being a reader or a listener. What does he mean by that?
Okay, so picture this. You've got two leaders.
Okay.
One thrives on these detailed reports.
Okay.
Loves to really think things through, needs everything in writing.
Got it.
That's your classic reader.
Reader.
Then you've got the other leader who shines in face-to-face meetings.
Okay.
Gathers information through conversation, making decisions on the fly.
Ah, I see.
That's a listener.
Interesting. Okay, but why is this so important? What's the big deal?
Well, think about someone like Dwight Eisenhower. Brilliant general, master strategist, relied heavily on thorough briefings, written reports, the whole 9 yards.
Classic reader.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as president, he actually struggled.
He did.
Yeah, because that role needed more of those off-the-cuff interactions.
Oh, more listener stuff.
Exactly. The kind of stuff that listeners just naturally excel at.
So he was great at his job until the job changed.
Right. Kind of unsettling.
A little bit, yeah.
It's a cautionary tale. Then you've got Lyndon Johnson, master listener in the Senate.
Oh, yeah.
Building consensus, backroom deals.
That was his thing.
Totally. But as president, his reliance on those written memos
Oh, interesting.
and being kind of uncomfortable with direct questions, it actually made him less effective.
So even someone as skilled as LBJ could trip up if he didn't understand how he worked best.
That's Drucker's point. It's not enough to just be smart or talented. You've got to know how you operate, how you process information, make decisions, that kind of thing.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack.
And this brings us to like a really important question for you listening. How aware are you of your own performance style?
Whoa, that's a good question. I've honestly never really thought about it. I mean, do I do my best work when I have time to plan and research, or am I more of a jump in and figure it out kind of person?
Right. It's worth thinking about.
It is.
Knowing your performance style can help you choose, like, roles and projects where you're more likely to thrive.
This is fascinating stuff. So we've covered strengths, we've talked about performance style. What else does Drucker have in store for us?
Well, he's got a lot to say about learning. In fact, he argues that very few listeners can be made, or can make themselves, into competent readers and vice versa.
So even though our school system kind of pushes this one-size-fits-all approach to learning,
Yeah,
it doesn't actually work for everyone. Explains a lot about my school days.
exactly. He talks about Winston Churchill, you know,
Hmm.
famously struggled in school, but then became this brilliant writer and orator later in life. Churchill, he learned by writing, not by sitting in a classroom.
That reminds me of Beethoven. Apparently, he left behind all these stacks of sketchbooks, but he claimed he never looked at them while composing. It's like he learned by doing, not by overthinking.
Right. It's such a great reminder that we all have these unique learning styles. And figuring yours out, that can make a huge difference in how effectively you absorb information and learn new skills.
Hmm.
But let's face it, very few of us achieve great things totally alone.
True, true. So how does this whole managing oneself thing fit into working with others?
Well, Drucker really emphasizes that we have to take responsibility for our relationships at work.
Okay, that sounds good, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, it starts with remembering that everyone else is an individual too, right? Just like you.
Yeah.
They have their own strengths, their own ways of working, their own values.
It's easy to forget that sometimes, you know? You just fall into this trap of thinking that everyone should operate the way you do.
Oh, totally. And Drucker has this great example that really drives the point home.
Oh, yeah.
So this person, they're trained to write super detailed reports for their boss, who's a total reader.
Okay.
But then the boss changes and a listener takes over. This person, though, they just keep churning out those reports, even though the new boss would much rather just, talk things through face to face.
Ouch. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Right. The lesson here is clear. If you want to build strong working relationships, you have to understand how the other person works and adapt accordingly.
Yeah.
Don't just assume everyone wants to be communicated with in the same way you do.
So taking responsibility for those relationships, it starts with understanding others. But there's another key element here, right?
Okay, what's that?
Communication.
Exactly. Clear communication is just crucial. Think about it. How many workplace conflicts just boil down to people not knowing what others are doing,
Oh.
how they're contributing,
Hmm.
or what they expect?
Totally been there. It's crazy how much clarity can come from just asking, hey, what are you working on? Or what do you need from me?
Simple questions.
Simple but powerful.
And Drucker, he made this really interesting observation. He said when he asked people about their work, their contributions, their values, the most common reaction was surprise
Surprise.
and gratitude. They'd often say, "Why didn't you ask me this earlier?"
Wow. It's like we're all just waiting for someone to acknowledge what we bring to the table.
Right. And it
Yeah.
makes you realize how much we assume we know what's going on without actually taking the time to communicate.
So true. So communication, it's not just for building relationships, it's for aligning your work with your values.
Yeah.
And this brings us to one of Drucker's, I think, most thought-provoking ideas,
Oh, yeah. What's that?
the mirror test.
Ooh, the mirror test. That sounds intense.
It does. Tell me more.
It's not about, checking your hair or anything. It's about checking your conscience. Drucker uses this story of a German ambassador in London.
Okay.
The guy was brilliant, on track for this amazing career. But then in 1906, he just shocks everyone, resigns.
He resigns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than host a dinner for King Edward VII.
Hold on. He gave up his whole career over a dinner. That seems a little extreme.
It wasn't about the food. This ambassador was deeply principled. And he just found the king's values, well, let's just say, less than admirable.
Yeah.
He reportedly said, "I refuse to see a pimp in the mirror in the morning when I shave."
Wow. Talk about a strong moral compass. Okay, I get it now. It's not literally about looking in a mirror. It's about being able to look at yourself and feel good about the work you're doing. The people you're working with, the values you're representing.
Exactly. It's about asking yourself, does this job, this company, this project, does it align with who I am at my core?
Yeah.
What do I believe in?
If the answer's no.
You're just setting yourself up for frustration. You probably won't do your best work anyway.
Makes sense. Drucker actually shares a story about an HR executive who left this amazing job because of a values clash. Her company, they believed in always hiring externally for top positions,
Okay.
but she felt really strongly about promoting from within. She couldn't get behind this idea of overlooking, loyal, hardworking employees in favor of this fresh blood, as they called it.
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
But it shows how deeply these values run. And if you're
Hmm.
constantly battling your own conscience, feeling like you're compromising your principles, that's going to wear you down.
Absolutely. This all makes me think about the bigger picture of our careers. What happens when we hit that mid-career point or even later? Does Drucker have any advice for navigating what he calls the second half of life?
Oh, this is where Drucker gets really interesting.
Yeah.
He was already recognizing back in the 90s that longer lifespans, they were going to change the whole game.
Yeah.
People were hitting a wall in their 40s and 50s. They were good at their jobs, but they weren't growing. They weren't learning, starting to feel, well, bored.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that feeling. You get to a certain level of competence, and then it's like, okay, what's next? You just coast until retirement?
Drucker says no way. Managing yourself effectively means starting to think about a second career.
A second career.
And don't wait till you're 60 to do it either.
Okay, but what does that even look like? Should I be learning how to code or something?
Doesn't have to be that drastic. Drucker outlines three main paths you can take.
Okay, lay 'em on me.
First, you can move to a different organization, one that offers more challenges, more growth potential, or maybe one that just aligns better with your values.
Okay, that makes sense. Sometimes you just need a change of scenery.
Totally. Second, you can develop a parallel career. This could be like a part-time job, some consulting on the side, volunteering for a cause you're passionate about.
That's a good one. A great way to explore new interests.
Right? Or use your skills for something you really care about.
Yeah.
And finally, you could become a social entrepreneur.
Ooh, a social entrepreneur.
Yeah, start a venture that addresses some social problem you really care about. Drucker gives this great example of the successful lawyer who also launched a whole venture to create model schools.
Wow. Talk about making a difference. And he did that while working a full-time job. That's amazing.
And that's Drucker's point. In this world that's dominated by knowledge work, you've got to think of yourself as your own CEO, even if you technically work for someone else.
So we're all entrepreneurs now.
In a way, yeah. Drucker saw self-management as a necessity, not a luxury. We can't just sit back and wait for someone to tell us what to do.
I love that. It's exciting, but a little daunting too.
I get it.
All this talk of managing yourself, second career, this rapidly changing world, it's a lot.
It is. But that's where Drucker's wisdom is so valuable. He gives you this roadmap,
Hmm.
for taking control of your career and your life. And remember, he was writing this back in the late 90s. His ideas are even more relevant today.
Absolutely. The way we work is changing so fast. Traditional career paths, they're practically disappearing. It feels like we're all just figuring it out as we go.
And Drucker recognized that. The old model of working for one company your whole life, that was becoming increasingly rare.
Yeah.
Knowledge workers, they're more mobile, they've got more options, and they're likely to outlive the organizations they work for.
So it's not just about finding a job anymore. It's about building a career that can adapt and evolve as the world changes around us.
Exactly. And Drucker saw self-management as the key to navigating this whole new reality.
Okay, so we need to be thinking like entrepreneurs, taking ownership, preparing for a second act. But where do we even start with all of this?
Well, I think it starts with a mindset shift, recognizing that you're in the driver's seat of your own career.
That could be both empowering and terrifying at the same time.
Absolutely. But once you embrace that, then you can start to think strategically about your strengths, your values, how you can contribute value in a market that's constantly changing.
So it's not just about working hard, it's about working smart, making sure that your efforts are aligned with your goals and values.
Exactly. Drucker talks about setting clear goals for yourself and then creating a plan to achieve them. This might involve seeking out new opportunities, developing new skills, building relationships with people who can help you along the way.
And of course, he stresses the importance of continuous learning, right? You can't just rely on what you learned in school or early in your career. You've got to constantly be updating your knowledge and skills. Otherwise, you get left behind.
He was a huge believer in lifelong learning. It's a responsibility. You have to stay curious and keep growing.
This all makes total sense, but I gotta be honest, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. There's just so much information out there, and the world's changing so fast. How do we know what to focus on? How do we avoid getting lost in all the noise? It really is. It's like we're standing at this giant buffet of information, but we only have one plate.
Right. How do you choose what to put on it? Well, that's where Drucker's advice on time management is just so essential. He says time is totally irreplaceable. We can find substitutes for almost anything else, but not for time.
Once it's gone, it's gone.
Exactly.
That one hit a little too close to home. I'm definitely guilty of wasting time on stuff that doesn't really matter. So how do we get better at managing this precious resource?
Drucker suggests a really simple but powerful exercise. Track your time for a week or two. Write down everything you do and how long you spend on it.
I have a feeling I'd be horrified. Like, wait, I spend how many hours scrolling social media?
It can be eye-opening, for sure. But once you see where your time is actually going, then you can start to make conscious choices about how you spend it.
Become more intentional, less
Now,
reactive.
exactly. It's about identifying those low-priority tasks that are just sucking up your time and energy, and then finding ways to, like, streamline them or eliminate them altogether.
That probably means saying no more often, especially to things that don't align with our goals or values.
Saying no is a superpower, but it's one we often forget to use. Drucker also talks about consolidating your time. Finding those blocks of uninterrupted time to focus on your most important work.
That's so hard these days. With all the distractions, emails, phone calls, social media, it's like somebody's always tugging at our attention.
It's a constant battle, that's for sure. But it's worth it, because when you carve out those blocks of focused time, that's when you can get into that flow state. That's when you do your best work.
It's like the difference between, I don't know, trying to write a novel in 5-minute increments versus having a whole afternoon to really dive in and get lost in it.
Right. Now, don't forget the big picture here. Drucker encourages us to think about the second half of life as a time to make a real contribution. He saw it as an opportunity to become a role model, for yourself and others.
This whole idea of contribution keeps coming up. It really seems like it's at the heart of Drucker's whole philosophy of self-management. It's not just about being successful, it's about making a difference.
It is. And that contribution, it can take so many forms. It could be mentoring someone, volunteering your time, or starting a business that solves a problem you care about.
This deep dive has been quite a journey. We've covered so much, from identifying our strengths to managing our time to even, thinking about our legacy.
It has been a pleasure exploring all these ideas with you.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked about the importance of knowing yourself, managing your time, making a contribution. But maybe the most important takeaway from all of this is that self-management, it's a journey, not a destination.
It's a process. Continuous learning, adapting, evolving. There's no finish line.
And that's okay. So be patient with yourself, embrace the challenges, and never stop learning. And remember what Drucker said, the best way to predict the future is to create it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into managing oneself. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. We'll see you next time.